Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and we've had quite a few updates already this week, but we haven't covered any of the latest Apple news for a few different weeks. So I thought we'd take a look at the latest iPhone leaks, iOS 18 releases, and much more. This is your weekly Apple news update for the week of July 10th, 2024. Now, if you're in the EU and you miss playing Fortnite on iPhone, there's good news as Apple has approved Epic's Game Store for sideloading. The third-party app store should be available now, at least temporarily anyway, where you can install Fortnite, maybe some other games as well, and that should be available just in the European Union. If you have access to that or you've installed it, I'd love to hear from you in the comments just to see what that's like since I don't have access to it here in the United States. Apple has now scheduled its next quarterly earning results for August 1st. This is typically when they talk about how much they've sold when it comes to services, iPhones, iPads, Macs, and more. So if you're interested in this, I'll link it in the description if you'd like to check it out yourself, and then you can listen in live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on August 1st. Now, Apple is actually closing a store for good in Sweden. On July 13th, the Apple Valla Centrum store is actually going to close permanently. Apparently, this is only 1 out of 3 total stores in all of Sweden. So it looks like they're closing it, whether or not it's due to sales, maybe they just don't need it anymore. It's hard to say, but if you're in this specific area in Sweden, I'd love to hear from you to see why you think they've actually closed it, as they haven't said specifically. Apple actually has a new website for Apple Watch showing the benefit and sort of trying to convince parents to use an Apple Watch for their kids. You'll see it says set up any Apple Watch with cellular for your kids, even if they don't have their own iPhone. It goes through how this works, where you have connectivity with your child, maybe where they're at with Find My, and much more. So this is a brand new website Apple released today. I'll link it in the description, and it's basically kid-centric, maybe to teach you more about how this works, or maybe buy an Apple Watch for your kids. Let me know what you think of this in the comments as well. There's a new support document Apple released the other day where it says recognize and avoid social engineering schemes, including phishing messages, phony support calls, and other scams. They go over different tips and tricks on how to avoid this, how to protect your account and devices, and much more. Again, I'll link this in the description. I think it's great to hear from Apple directly what they think you should do to avoid suspicious phone calls or voicemails, and even where you can actually report it. Now, Apple TV today actually revealed a new teaser for Severance Season 2. Now, there's good news and bad news here, and on X or Twitter, Apple actually posted a new trailer for Severance Season 2. You'll see here that they return 1/17/2025. Now, unfortunately, that's 2025, so that's quite a few months away at this point, and we thought maybe it would be sooner than that, but at least it's in the works, and we'll see it next year. Now, as far as weekly deals this week, well, there's quite a few when it comes to AirPods. AirPods 3, AirPods Max, AirPods Pro 2 all have deals this week sold directly by Apple on Amazon. There's also deals with the MacBook Pro up to $500 off on Amazon and Best Buy, and MacBook Air M1 is down to $649 to start at Walmart. I'll link all of the latest deals in the description, and some of those are pretty great. Of course, there's Amazon's Prime Day coming up, and maybe that's why we're seeing some of those discounts as well. Now, as far as releases this week, there were quite a few. On Monday, we had iOS 18 Beta 3. On Tuesday, we had iOS 17.6 Beta 3. And today, or the other day, we had AirPods Pro 2 Beta firmware. It's basically Beta 2. Let's go ahead and open this up. I'm not sure it's updated just yet, as I haven't checked. Let's go into our AirPods settings here. And if we go into the menu, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that I'm currently on version 7A. 220E. The latest firmware that hasn't been updated yet on my AirPods are 7A5244B. This would be the second beta. Hopefully it helps with overall connectivity with iOS 18 betas. And if you want to enable it, you have to actually have a developer mode enabled here that we have at the bottom, and then scroll all the way to the bottom where it has pre-release beta firmware. Now, in order to get this developer mode, you actually have to plug into a Mac with Xcode, so it's not simple and straightforward typically, but then you go in and just turn on AirPod testing. Then it will install on its own, just like all of the AirPods updates do. So I'll charge these, put them next to my phone, and it should install on its own. Hopefully it does that very soon. Now, many people are wondering when we'll get iOS 18 Public Beta 1. Now, based on last year, this probably will be early next week. Last year, Apple released it on July 12th. That's actually when the first public beta came out, and maybe we'll have it at the end of this week or early next. I'm guessing early next week just based on what we've had already, maybe with a Beta 3 re-release. We also could get iOS 17.5.2, and you can see that MacRumors posted about it where it looks like it's coming soon. Whether or not it fixes the alarm clock bug or some other issue, we don't really know, but we can expect security updates with it and more. If not this week, probably sometime next week as well. We're also waiting for iOS 17.6 RC. I would expect that as soon as maybe next Tuesday, with a final release the following week. That seems to make the most sense, maybe interchanging back and forth between iOS 18 beta releases and iOS 17 releases. So we've got a few updates we're waiting for that we should see within the next week or so. Now, when it comes to Apple Intelligence, many of us are waiting for this, of course, and we expect to try out some of the Apple Intelligence features in iOS 18 betas soon. In fact, maybe with Beta 4 we'll see it, or the Beta 3 re-release, and it seems the updated or revamped version of Siri may not be available until spring 2025 with iOS 18.4. This is according to Mark Gurman in his weekly Power On newsletter. However, 0.4 updates are usually before spring, at least in beta form, and we'll have to wait and see if it's going to be that far out. But either way, it looks like all of those features are not going to launch right away as expected. Apple Intelligence is also active in iOS 18 Beta 3's simulator and Xcode, but not on the phone. This also hints that it could be coming very soon, and Apple would just need to enable it. Apple is also hoping that the lack of support for AI or Apple Intelligence features for iPhones other than the iPhone 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max will help boost sales initially by up to 10%. This is according to a report by Bloomberg. Now, Apple said that they're not including Apple Intelligence on anything other than the 15 Pro or 15 Pro Max due to issues with the processor or maybe just not enough RAM, as artificial intelligence features really require a ton of RAM. Either way, I think this is a bit upsetting for quite a few people and a bit disappointing as Apple isn't including it in older devices and is just encouraging people to upgrade. Let me know what you think about that as well. Now, we pretty much know everything to expect with the upcoming iPhone 16. We know that the base models will look basically like this, and we know that there's going to be a bunch of different feature updates, but not a major redesign other than maybe this camera bump here. Now, the latest thing from DigiTimes reaffirms what we knew with the 5x tetraprism zoom lens on the Pro model. This year, we had the Pro Max with the tetraprism zoom up to 5x. It looks like they're going to carry that across to the 16 Pro model as well, not just the 16 Pro Max. We thought this already, but it looks like they've just reaffirmed it. Also, according to DigiTimes, the upcoming Face ID in the new iPhone 16 models will be different as far as the components are concerned. They didn't specify what that means, but it could be smaller components to make a smaller dynamic island, or just maybe a revamping of them to make them more power efficient or just work better overall. Either way, it looks like some of those components have changed given the supply chain and what they're seeing there. The internals of iPhones get updated every year, and this year all iPhone 16 models seemingly will have similar chips instead of last year's chips. Code discovered by Nicholas Alvarez from X, shared with MacRumors, has shown that 4 models releasing later this year will have similar chips. Now, this may mean we'll have an A18, but we could have an A18 and an A18 Pro. But either way, they won't be older chips, and hopefully that's probably to help with Apple Intelligence, have more RAM, and much more. So that makes a lot of sense that they would include at least some upgrade in all of them, not just use last year's chipset. And the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max phones apparently will support 40-watt fast charging. This is according to a Chinese site called IT Home. So it looks like they could have faster charging in the Pro models, and that makes sense if they're redoing the battery we've talked about before, where they're going to encase it in some sort of metal, make it easier to remove, and give it better thermals overall. So if it can cool itself more rapidly, it wouldn't have to slow down or anything else. So that makes a lot of sense to have faster charging, and I think a lot of people would welcome that. Now, while we have yet to see the iPhone 16 released to the public, Apple is hard at work at the next iterations of iPhones. The iPhone 17 is said to drop the Plus model in favor of an iPhone 17 Slim. It looks like that would be the replacement for it and maybe even be a special edition. It's said to be aluminum instead of maybe titanium and have a 6.6-inch display according to Ross Young. It would have an anti-reflective coating similar to what we have with Samsung, the camera would have a new arrangement, and other updates to the cameras and internals are expected. So we could see some sort of new flagship now that the iPhone X or iPhone X is now obsolete or vintage. Maybe we'll see something replace that people will love. Mark Gurman this week has said that Apple is working on a new Apple Watch SE, but with a plastic body instead of the current aluminum variant. This could reduce cost even further, making it maybe down to $199 for an entry-level model. Maybe for kids, maybe that's why they're pushing that as well, but it makes sense to maybe bring the price down even further. Apple Watch Series 10 or Apple Watch X is said to feature a larger display this year with an updated chipset. However, the overall design appears to not be changing as much as people thought originally. It'll be thinner overall, but also have a larger display. Of course, it will have upgraded internals in both the Apple Watch 10 or X and Apple Watch Ultra 3, but the Apple Watch Ultra 3 is said to not be changing very much. Initially, it was thought that they would change the overall band mechanism to allow them to connect to maybe new style bands, and while we could still see something like that, it looks like we'll be able to continue to use our bands in the next version if these rumors are true. The updated chipset is also said to be for AI features, but not featuring Apple Intelligence. So it won't be fast enough for that, but it will have some Apple Intelligence or AI features in the works. While health sensors and health features are in the works, Mark Gurman says that the current development may not be going to plan. This is due to unreliable results and the lack of use of the blood oxygen sensor in the United States. You would need that for things such as sleep apnea and more to give a more accurate reading. So it looks like we should have some new sensors, but we don't really know what that entails yet, as Apple's having quite a bit of issues with those. The last rumor has to do with a new home device. Now, Apple discontinued the original HomePod and made it vintage this past week with the iPhone 10. However, it looks like Apple's working on a new HomePod with maybe a display on it. However, Mark Gurman calls this a tabletop robot. So what that means specifically, we don't know. Maybe it will follow you around, similar to what Amazon has, or maybe something else entirely. But either way, it would be great to have a HomePod device with a display on it, so maybe you could control some of your home devices if Apple plans to go more in that direction. Either way, I would expect some sort of update, as there's much code that's already hinting at new home devices. So we're waiting to see those. We'll probably see at least something like that in the fall. However, Apple has been known to release things in August as well, iMacs and things like that, but we haven't really heard of any releases coming up until September. And so that's everything this week with the news. Lots going on with iPhone 16 as Apple gets ready to release that in September, iOS 18, Apple Intelligence, and much more. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.